Good evening, everybody. Welcome to John Arnett's Ways. Well, I've gotten a lot of requests for leather work, so that's what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to try to keep it as basic as I can, not use a bunch of power tools, because I've been getting some requests for some leather work projects and things like that. So what we're going to do today is we're going to make a sheath for this knife. This is the knife I'm sending to David and Kelsey's son. It's a boning knife. It's a beautiful knife. 100th subscriber giveaway. So it's finally getting around to finishing it up and getting a sheath made for it. So I figured what better time to do a leather video. So what I did is I basically took the knife and I found me a nice scrap piece of leather, and I laid that knife on that leather, and I got me a pattern. Well, what I did is I laid that knife down and I traced the edge of that knife and where I wanted the sheath to come to, like this. And I just traced the outside profile of the knife onto the leather. Now this is rough. It's got to be sanded, but that's okay. For an example, it'll be fine. Then what I do is I allow for the thickness of the knife in the extra leather, folded it over, and marked it again, and cut the other side. So both sides line up, okay? It's going to be a beautiful tool, beautiful knife sheath. Now I can adjust this to where it fits at whatever depth I want by wet forming it down here, okay? So I can put a wet form in that and stop that knife there, or I can drop it down in there and stop it lower. I like them just a touch high, about right there. And that's probably where I'll wet form it. However, some people might want it dropped down a little lower, and I may drop it down in there just a bit. Just a tick. But anyway, that's what it's going to look like. So all I'm doing now, I cut that out with a razor blade. Just a regular, old-fashioned razor blade. They're cheap, inexpensive. You can get them anywhere. Or you can use it as a pair of shears like this, or an X-Acto knife, utility knife. They make a leather cutting tool. It goes on your finger, and it swivels, so you can control it with these two fingers and cut that leather pattern out. A lot of professional leather makers, saddle makers, shoe makers, they all use them. But that's what that sheath is, the pattern looks like on that sheath. Now it's got water on it. What that water does, it helps me to bend it, makes it more flexible. So there's the pattern, there's the sheath. What we're doing now is we're cutting a welt for that. What that welt's going to do is set in there like that right there and create thickness along the edge. What that does is that gives me a nice gap that doesn't pinch the knife up, but yet protects the stitches from the edge of the knife being taken in and out of the sheath. It gives me a nice buffer there. And it looks better with that thickness in there. So I'm just finished cutting this whelp out with these pliers, or these shears. You can get these shears anywhere, Hobby Lobby, Walmart, anywhere there's a craft store. You can get them 9 times out of 10. They probably won't say leather cutting, but if you get the good ones, they'll cut leather just fine. These are dull, very dull. And they're leaving a jagged edge on the leather. An edge that I'll have to go back and clean up. Now, normally when you're just doing a single project, it's not that big of a deal. But when you're doing a project that I have going on, you're going to need some sharp ones. So I'll end up getting me another pair here before too long, before I really start making a ton of knife sheaths. It'll help me out time-wise, and save me a lot of time in getting all those knife sheaths together. They are time consuming. They require a lot of leather. And as you know, stuff's not cheap in this day and age, so we'll just have to make do with what we got. Use what we can and not worry about the rest. But we'll get it. We'll get it. This whelp is pretty essential when it comes to making knife sheaths. Now, you can probably get by with wallets and handbags and things like that without a lot of whelping. But when it comes to knife sheaths, you pretty much need a whelp for protection of the knife blade. Protects the stitches. The last thing you want is a knife sheath to come apart because your knife blade's cutting the stitching. That's not a good thing. Then you got it back at the knife maker and he's fixing his sheath, or the sheath maker. A lot of knife makers don't make their own sheaths. They'll send them away and have somebody else do the leather work because they just don't like to mess with it. Well, I'm a firm believer if you make the knife, you ought to be able to make a sheath for it. That's just how I believe. There's a lot of guys out there that do a lot of high-end custom knife work. And they want a high-end custom knife sheath. Well, the knife work takes so much time and effort that they just don't have enough time to put into the type of sheath that they're after, with exotic skins and things of that nature. So there's our whelp. And what we're going to do before we do anything is we are going to test fit this whelp on the edge of this sheath just to make sure that it's going to work out. And I believe it's going to be just fine. And that's what that'll look like. Just follows the edge of the sheath, just like that. And then when it closes up, you have your whelp in there. All right, we got our whelp cut. Now the next thing I'll do is I will fold this up, okay, to where everything lines up. And I will sand these edges until they are exactly the same. So what I'll do is I'll take a couple clamps. Let me get a couple clamps here. Just like so. And what that's going to do is allow me to hold this sheath without these two pieces moving, so I can sand them accordingly. Now I've got a couple grinders over there. I could walk over to a grinder and say zip, done, okay? But I'm not going to do that because I want to make a video for the average person to be able to do and see how it's done. So I will show you how to do it by hand and start it. And then I will stop the video, go ahead and finish it on my grinder, and come back so we don't spend all the next 30, 40 minutes sanding. But you'll get the gist. So what I'll do when I want to sand this even is I'll take a piece of sandpaper. You can get a piece of sheet paper, 11-inch, or if you're lucky enough to find it, you can get some cloth back 2-inch 80 grit lead oxide. And all you got to do is lay it down on your bench or your table or wherever you're at. Clamp it down, just like so. Get a couple more clamps. And clamp it down. I'm sorry, I keep disappearing. Maybe I should have been more prepared, right? Oh, this is thick. This tabletop is thick. Maybe that'll hold. Anyway, you want to clamp your sandpaper down so it don't move around on you. Just like that. Then we'll come in here and we'll just run that sheath up and down that paper. And the leather's pretty soft, but what it does is it clogs up the paper pretty good. But it does do the job. And all you're doing is trying to get it even. And it's very important that you get both sides even, because when you go to lay off your stitching and you want your stitches to not, what I call, blow out the other side. When you go to make the hole, all your stitching will be inside the groove that I will show you here in a minute what we'll make to hide the stitching. You want that needle to be in both grooves on both sides, so it's imperative that your sheath is even on both sides. Just take it off and check it, and that's about as pretty good as it gets there. And you'll just do it on the other end. All you're doing is just getting them even. Just work that thing down. Keep checking it. Just like so. Just keep sanding on it. I'll tell you what, let me move it around here where you can see. I'm just taking in and following that edge like that right there. Stop and check it now and again. And you can see she's really starting to even up. It don't take much and it don't take long. Now's a good time to profile it too. You know, if you got a little place that may have a bump out or something like that, you can always go in there like this right here. You see that little where it's not really a nice smooth transition? Now's a good time to fix that. So we'll come in here and fix it. Just like so. Just a little bit more tip needs to be took off. It just takes a little patience and a little time. And there it is. And we'll just finish up going down through here. Well, you get how to get these edges even. And you can always, if you don't want to do it this way, unclip your sandpaper. If you want to do it the other way, you can fold your sandpaper up and take and sand it. You don't get much leverage this way, but for getting in some of the tight corners and things, that's how you have to do it, to follow the contours of the knife. And this stuff sands away pretty good. The drier it is, the better it sands. See, this leather's a little damp where I formed it, or wet formed it till I can bend it better. A little bit of a difference right there. You see that right there? Well, we can clean that up pretty good. And that's pretty much how you get them even. So, what I'm going to do is step over here for a minute, plug my grinder up, and buzz that off right quick. So I'll be right back. Okay, we got the leather sheath sanded like we wanted it. Got the edges even, like so. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to give this thing some pizzazz, a little pizzazz. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open this sheath back up flat, just like that. It don't have to be folded over no more, since both sides are perfectly even. Okay, we're going to lay that thing flat down on this granite stone, and you don't have to have a granite stone. It just helps with the vibration, gives me a nice, hard, even surface to do my stamping and stitching, punching, and all that. So what I'm going to do is wet this leather some more.
Supper's ready when you're ready.
Okay, darling. Get it nice and wet. What that does is that gets that leather a nice, even color. Really darkens it up. You don't have to wet the underside anymore if you don't want to. If you do, that's fine. Just remember, all that water's got to dry. So you just want enough water on there to let you allow you to clean up the leather and whatnots and things of that nature. Just remember, it has to dry before you can actually apply any finish to it. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a basic tool that you can get from any leather store or any place that you want to get your tool kit from. And this is an edger, this tool right here. And what this tool does is it cleans up this outer edge of this leather all the way around this sheath. Gives it a nice clean edge. So let's go ahead and do that. You take and start. Now this leather has grain, so it'll come off one way a lot easier than the other, and you'll figure that out. You just want to run that tool down that edge and clean that edge up. So it don't want to cut that way, so let's try the other way. That's much better. That'll take just a thin edge off that, a thin piece of leather off that edge, and clean it up very well. Give it a nice clean look, just like so. That's what that looks like when that comes off there. It just cleans that edge of that leather up really nice. And that's what we're after. We want a nice clean look. Nice clean edge. And we're gonna burnish it when we get done, close to being done with it. Really cleans up that edge. Just make sure you go all the way around the sheath or the pouch, or whatever you're working on. This will give you a nice definitive edge to run the rest of your tools over too. Just make sure you go all the way around it. Just like so. Nice clean edge. If you want, you can roll it over and do the back side also. Just remember, it's not as easy, but I do. Got a little bit more hair on the unfinished side. No problem, it'll come right off. Just don't get discouraged if you run into a little issue. Never get discouraged. It took me a long time to learn how to do this. Trial and error. A lot of it self-taught. Some of it I learned from friends. A few videos. Never hurts to watch a good video now and again from real pros. I just make a decent sheath that should last a long time for my knives. And I specialize in knife sheaths, so I kind of gravitated to a knife sheath when I wanted to do a demonstration. Anyway, it cleans it up pretty nice. That almost looks like the front side, don't it? That's the front side. Okay, now that we've got that done, first thing we want to do is we want to determine where and how far in we want our stitch line. Now, the normal is a 1/4 inch. I usually come a 1/4 inch in to run my stitch line. That gives me enough room to stay in my welt, which is our welt that we cut earlier, right here. Plus, it allows me enough room to clean the edge up again when I varnish it. It gives me enough room to, if I have to sand some more, or I find an uneven spot, it happens sometimes, I have enough room to do that. So I usually go a quarter inch in. And what we've got is another tool to help us do that. Is a grooving tool, if I can find it. I'm sure I got it here somewhere. Give me just a second. What's this right here? Here it is. Right here. This tool will cut on either side. It's designed to loosen up and adjust the groove distance from the edge of the sheath, okay? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna set this tool down on the block, and we're gonna move that bar in and out 1/4 inch or so. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just to make sure you allow yourself enough room for your stitching and cleanup. And that's going to be pretty good right there. And we'll tighten the tool back down so it don't slide. Tighten your knob back down. And if you're in doubt, take a piece of scrap leather, run it down the edge of a piece of scrap leather like so, and you can see how far away you are with the groove. And if you have to, you can take a tape measure. I've done it so long, I pretty much tell you that's a 1/4 inch, maybe 3/8. Some people, it may look big, but if I measured that, I would be within a 32nd of an inch. So. And it could be just a hair wide. So what we'll do is we'll come in and adjust that in just a tick, tighten it back down, cut another groove. We'll cut one right here. And that's what that looks like when that comes out, just a thin strand. What that does, that gives that a stitch a place to lay below the surface of the finished leather, so you don't wear the top of the stitches out. It's very important. It will save the longevity of your pouch or sheath. Now that we've got the distance that we want, we'll take our knife sheath and we're going to determine where we want our stitches to start. So we want our stitches to start here or here, depending on which side you want to start on. It don't matter, because you're going to groove all the way around this knife sheath. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, and you want to follow the contour of your sheath, okay? All the way around it. If you have to, you can go back over it again. Just remember, you're removing material. We'll come around here. Me, I like them pretty deep, so. And don't be afraid to push on it. You're not going to hurt it. Okay. We'll get this thing grooved. You cut these grooves and everything. You cut them in pouches, knife sheaths, holsters, saddles. Saddle makers cut them. They're pretty much cut in about every leather worker's product. There's some things they don't cut them in, but most things are cut with a groove to hide the stitch or protect the stitching. Okay. And you'll see a lot better when I'm done here. I can pick it up off the bench. I think that's pretty good. So now we got a groove cut all the way around this bad boy. So I'm going to stop this one. We'll call this basic leather number 1. It's been 11 minutes. I'm going to keep it short. So next time we'll come back, we'll glue our welt, glue up our sheath. But before that, we'll go ahead before we end this video and do this one thing. Since my friend has a nice heritage and comes from good people, we're going to stamp a couple of them in there. Eagle feathers. And I think he'll really like that. So all we do is take that stamp, make sure the feather's upright, get it over here where I think it needs to be, and we'll stamp it. Just take you a mallet, and we'll put them in there. Just like so. And I think that'll suffice. I got it. Big word for a little fellow. All right, let's call that done. And we'll come back later and I'll make the second video where we glue everything up. Get everything glued up, and we'll lay our stitching off, get it stitched, and put the finish on it. We'll call it. Thank y'all for joining me. Knife sheath. I love it. It's going to be awesome. Custom knife. Bless y'all. Be kind.